Okay, I'll just say real quick, wanted to thank Ben for his leadership in the chair over the past year. He did a great job. I thank everybody for their support. Welcome the new commissioners, and kind of an exciting time, I think, over the next year with the general plan update. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody. So on that, I guess we get to agenda item number 5. Appointment of 3 primary members of the Architectural Review Board.
Mr. Chair.
Chair Bowden, or do we have to still do the commission, or the, what's it called, where we the other group? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, Mr. Chair, I'd like to defer that to the next meeting. We have in our ordinance that there's conflicting language that the mayor technically should be the one appointing those 3 people. So with your permission, I'd like to strike this from the agenda for this meeting, just to confirm that.
As an aside, I was on that 2 years ago, and we met once the entire year. And last year, I don't know, were you on that last year? I don't know. So it's not something that takes a lot of time. So. Okay. Housekeeping, noting the citizens addressing the commission. Citizens may address the Planning Commission on any item on the agenda when the item is considered. Citizens wishing to speak may request recognition from the presiding officer by raising his or her hand and stepping to the podium when requested to do so. An opportunity will be provided for citizens wishing to speak on non-agenda items to similarly request recognition and address the Planning Commission. 3-minute time limits may be placed on citizen comments. Don't see anybody on Zoom that wishes to comment on a non-agenda item. It appears not. Okay. All right. Sorry. So moving on to the consent calendar, approving minutes of November 10, 2021 and December 16, 2021. Have a little issue because normally people who don't attend the meetings or commissioners who don't attend the meetings, they abstain. But in this case, we've got 4, we have a majority of members who weren't on the commission at that time. So is there?
Yeah, so sorry, turn the mics up. Because of the issue, the problem that we had, not having a quorum and being that those individuals are no longer on, we need to ask for a vote to acknowledge the preparation of the minutes so that we can get them approved.
Okay. Before we do that, is there anybody who wants to comment on the minutes? Has any pulling them off the consent calendar? Okay, so we need a motion from somebody wants to, if you want to help them with the wording on that.
Motion to approve based off of Ellen's comments.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Minutes or consent calendar is unanimously approved. On to number 7, public hearing. Consideration of a use permit application UP 22-01 for Prestige Assisted Living Facility for the construction of an illuminated monument sign at the property located at 515 Harris Street on the, and I actually think that's the northeast corner, not the northwest corner, of Harris Street and Covalot Street. So is the applicant or representative present today?
I'm not 100% sure there is one individual on there. I don't know who that is. It's not, hold on, they got their hand raised.
Okay. Well, we will first, before we open the public hearing, we'll receive the staff report, and after that, we'll go around the commission. It's been our practice to ask questions if they have questions on the staff report. So, Christina?
I'm a representative from Prestige. I'm on Zoom.
Okay. We'll once the public hearing is open, we'll call on you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you put my PowerPoint up, please? Thank you. All right, good evening, commissioners and Mr. Chair. I'm here to present use 2201. It is for a sign for Prestige Medical Facility located at 515 Harris Street, which is the northeast corner of Covalot and Harris. Next slide, please. So the reason we are here today is a illuminated sign in a residential district does require a use permit. This property is zoned residential 4, which is general apartments, and the surrounding zoning is single family. To the north, we have C1, which is neighborhood commercial. Next slide, please. So an illuminated sign in a residential district does require a use permit. This applicant has requested one because this Harris Street, which is where their primary access is pretty dark at nighttime. This was taken approximately at 9 p.m. Next slide, please. And that's where their sign currently is with their entrance, and it is difficult to see at nighttime. Next slide, please. So what you see is the current existing sign, which does not have lighting, and the proposed sign, which will be internally illuminated with push out letters. So the entire sign itself will not be lit. It will just be the letters. This will provide just enough illumination to for access to the driveway without disturbing the nearby residences. Next slide, please. And they're also proposing to update their directional sign so that it matches the new sign. So again, we have the current sign and the proposed sign, which point to the entrance. Next slide. City staff is recommending approval of this use permit with the following 6 conditions. This is my presentation, and I can answer any questions you may have.
I have a question to the chair. Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate the fact that the illumination comes only from the white lettering. Could you explain what the material is of the remainder of it? Is it a stucco material? Is the whole content of it plastic? Just simply with some of it opaque and some of it translucent?
It is an acrylic sign. Could you go back to slides if that's okay? You should have also got a copy of the plans in there. Okay, perfect. So the bottom is going to be of a brick facade, and then the, there we go. So the bottom is made of brick. The top is acrylic. It is not translucent except for where the letters will be.
Just so I'm clear, when you say acrylic, is acrylic plastic, a heavy plastic?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I would defer to the applicant if they are here on more specifics. The applicant would be the sign company itself, not the applicant officially is the sign company representing Prestige Assisted Living.
Okay. And this is similar to other signs that we have around town that have been approved in the past?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Messer, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Commissioner Rollins?
Not at this time.
Commissioner Bramer?
Yeah, I do have a question, but I don't know if it's going to be directed to you or to the applicant. So with the acrylic sign on the west, is it UV protected? Because I know I'm familiar with their street. It's the sun's baking on that thing.
I would defer to the applicant for that question.
Sure.
I believe it's skinned with aluminum everywhere except where that actual acrylic is cut out to be able to show through. It says it's skinned with 0.80 aluminum sheeting. So I think it's fine for sunwear.
Thank you. Commissioner Langsdorf?
No questions at this time.
I have no questions at this time.
All right, then I defer to the applicant. Thank you.
Have we received any communications from the neighbors or any?
We did send out notices to all property owners within 300 feet, and some jurisdictions that we received no positive or negative inquiries.
I guess we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Since there's no speakers here, we won't worry about requiring them to go up to the rostrum. And just a reminder that commissioners are free to ask questions of the speakers during the public hearing. So I guess we'll hear from the applicant first. Is the applicant there?
Unless Brandy is representing the applicant is not
Okay.
on.
Applicant or the representative.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
You wish?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
the existing sign does have lights that used to work pointing up to it, and the new sign won't be illuminated any more than that was. I'm also a neighbor of this, of the community as well, and so I'm glad that you guys showed the pictures of how dark it is. I know that we've had some issues in that neighborhood with vagrants, and I think the lighting would also help in that area as well. So I'm kind of speaking for a little bit of both as a resident and a representative of Prestige.
Okay, thank you. And do commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Anybody else?
I do have a question.
Okay, sorry.
Well, hopefully you can, it's kind of a recommendation. I don't know if you guys considered twisting the sign to face north-south instead of east-west. Because when you drive by on that west side, it's I mean, because of the sun, it's fully deteriorating the current sign.
Yeah, that sign's been there for a number of years. We could absolutely address that. It hasn't been placed yet, so that's always an option.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a consideration, something to think about, kind of moving it towards more of the corner on Harris and Covalot too, to where if you go north-south, you get more traffic going on Covalot than you do Harris.
Correct.
Right,
Commissioner Bramer, is that something you're interested in putting as a condition or?
Oh, just something for them to think about.
Okay.
I have a question. What is the current sign made out of? Is it wood? Is it plastic? Do we know?
It's kind of a combination of wood and like almost a vinyl.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just a comment to go off of what Ben Brenner was saying. When I originally looked at this, when I got the packet, that's where I thought the sign was actually going to go, is further out towards the corner, because the thoroughfare right there is actually Covalot Street. So you would think that you'd see that off of Covalot. It's kind of hidden off to the corner where it's located right now. So twisting it would help, but moving it down towards Covalot would also be a good idea. And again, not a condition, just a comment.
May I address the commission?
Yes.
So we do have, would you please go to the last slide? We do have a condition currently being proposed before you that says that they must adhere to the submitted plans. The plans do have the location on them, and it does meet the setback requirements for signs. If they did propose to move it, that is fine, but they would have to resubmit for an amendment to the use permit. That can be done at the staff level if you're comfortable with that.
I'm good. Okay, no more comments? And we'll close the public hearing.
So, Chairman Bodden, just one other comment. I guess the only other, I think it's fantastic that we're actually encouraging an applicant to move their sign into a place that's more visible to the public. And so compliments on that, just to make sure that there aren't any line of sight issues in that regard. Because that oftentimes happens as we start to encroach upon the right of way. Thank you.
Where the sign currently is outside of line of sight. If they did move it, I would just ask that those plans be submitted to ensure that it still adheres to those regulations.
Any other comments? Discussion? Further discussion? Somebody want to make a motion?
A motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Item number 8. Discussion, presentation, and workshop led by Kathy Pease, AICP on the Marysville Plan 2040, the upcoming general plan, specific plan, and zoning code updates. Discussion to include formation on the General Plan Advisory Committee and expected timeline. Kathy.
Good evening. Again, I'm Kathy Pease, a consultant with Management Advisory Services. Tonight, we're going to be asking or soliciting input from the Commission on 3 points. Again, we want to conduct a public workshop. We want to get your feedback on some issues. And then again, we're going to talk about the General Plan Advisory Commission. I did want to point out last fall, I gave an introductory overview of the general plan, and there should be slides from that presentation. If not, we can get those to you just to provide an overview of what a general plan is and some of the process. The city's general plan has not been updated since 1985. So this is an exciting time to refresh that and look for the vision for the city of Marysville. And at this point, I will turn the presentation over to Matthew Gherkin. He's with AECom, the consultant that's preparing the documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, Planning Commissioners, the Planning and Historic Preservation Commission, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Let's get that right. Hello, I'm Matthew, and I'll be helping you through what I think you'll find a very exciting, inspiring, challenging process to update the general plan and to prepare a specific plan for the central portion of Marysville. I have a presentation here, but you know, it's just us. So I hope to have a more informal discussion. I want you to interrupt me along the way, questions, things I should know, whatever comes to your mind, if that's all right, and treat my presentation as a sort of a rough framework for some things you might want to think about at the front end of a process like this. So my prepared remarks talk about the purpose of this effort. I'll break down the steps, the main steps of the process, how public engagement will be encouraged, and then we'll talk about what you think some of the key issues are, and I'll ask my colleagues to help me to take copious notes, particularly in that section of the presentation. Like I said, please stop me along the way for questions. Thank you. How many of you have been through a general plan update or the development of a specific plan before? Okay. All right. Me too. Excellent. So I'll be your helper. Don't worry about having been through the process or not before. I'm going to try to break down complex, weird planning, technical jargon things into normal human language and answer any questions in a way I hope that is accessible to people with various backgrounds. I think the plans are stronger actually if they're prepared by people with different backgrounds. So the focus of this general plan update is the constitution for the city, looking out to 2040, all the big picture things that we want to achieve for Marysville related to urban planning between now and 2040, say, especially promoting economic development and fiscal sustainability, especially expanding transportation options for people, especially for people who can't drive or don't wish to drive, expanding housing opportunities within Marysville, ensuring compliance with state law. The state legislature has a whole heck of a lot to say about what has to be in local general plans in California. We hope to streamline future development proposals that are consistent with the plans. And as I said, we're looking at a 2040 planning horizon. It's good to go out 20 or so years into the future and think big picture along the lines, along these lines when developing a general plan. Next, please. The purpose and the focus of the specific plan, and we can talk about what a specific plan is also, but for now, the purpose is basically contained in a grant application to the Sacramento Area Council of Governments that is funding that part of the effort. So for roughly the area you see highlighted in green on this slide, focusing housing production in that part of the city, promoting infill development, encouraging transit, bicycling, and walking to reach destinations, enhancing the important community assets that are present today, to have the whole effort formed with inclusive engagement, especially trying to reach those voices that are traditionally underrepresented in planning processes, and to address SACOG's green zone. Green means go. Basically, in certain smaller locations or certain limited locations within the region, trying to really focus on encouraging development, more activity, more housing, more ways for people to get around without having to rely on a private vehicle.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
What is the green, like, what area is the green zone? Where does it?
That's what I was trying to figure out also.
Like, what is it?
Could you go back one slide? Okay, so it's the north side of Ellis Lake on the north, and it's, I had this memorized a minute ago.
It's 5 districts: the Medical Arts District, the East Street Corridor, the Ellis Lake District, and the Downtown Core. And am I missing one? So basically it's 5 districts.
Right, with the river to the south, the railroad and Willow Street to the west, Ellis Lake to the north, and the railroad on the east. Does that help orient you?
Yeah, I'm trying to see how high that can go.
How far to the north?
Yeah, far north.
It
Right.
basically stops
South of the high
kind of
school,
basically right at the high school. So
Yeah.
mostly all of that is non-housing now.
And, you know, that's not fixed in scripture. This is a grant application. This is what SACOG has defined as the green zone. The specific plan can have somewhat different boundaries than that if it makes sense, given what the purpose is. Let me maybe talk a little bit about what a specific plan is, if that's helpful to the idea of where should it be. The specific plan is helpful under California law in facilitating development because it can supplant zoning. It can replace zoning. So it can have development standards, setback, allowable density, everything that you might look to zoning to do can be in the specific plan instead, therefore providing for ministerial at the counter approval for projects that are consistent with those standards it has environmental review for all those changes already, so there's no additional need for California Environmental Quality Act analysis. It shows backbone infrastructure improvements that are necessary to support future development within the specific plan area. And it has financing strategies for those infrastructure improvements. So it's kind of a whole package. It's almost like a master development for a smaller portion of your city. The idea is make it simpler, make it more straightforward to facilitate such development that's consistent with this specific plan. So that could be this area, or it could be a similar area that Plan Commission might want us to focus on.
So Matthew, let me ask you the loaded question that you put in the staff report, and that's a specific plan is a more detailed document that helps implement the vision of the general plan. Given the fact that our general plan is so old and we're updating it, it just seems that it would be odd to implement a specific plan before the general plan, since we don't really have a vision of our current general plan. So just to give us some context.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is intentional. Because of the grant funding, we're able to leverage those dollars in order to do the general plan more efficiently and for less money, because we have to do transportation studies, all of the things that we'd normally do for a standalone specific plan, we can leverage and do for the general plan at the same time. So the general plan as part of the process will be happening concurrently, but this is the first step, this meeting tonight, to get your input on the vision so that we can start taking those pieces and at the same time do our general plan and then fold that into a specific plan. So you will be asked to look at two separate projects, but they're kind of going concurrently, if that helps.
Thank you.
Yes, so we'll be consistent with the 2022 general plan and not a 1985 one. Although it would be interesting to see how that might work. The basic stages of the general plan are shown on this slide, and I'm going to talk about each one very briefly. Please slow me down for questions. Initiation. Welcome to initiation. That's where we've talked about the overall project's goals. And if you have thoughts along those lines, I'm all ears. We go over roles and responsibilities. I'm responsible for the technical work and preparing the general plan, and Kathy is going to be the lead person responsible for reviewing that. The schedule, which is we have about 14 months left or something like that. Yeah, that's initiation in a nutshell. And it involves, for me at least, I don't know how other consultants work, but I usually like to go on 5 or 6 9-hour walks around a community, really get to know it. And so I'm working on finding a place to stay and scheduling maybe on a weekend or something like that to really get literally down to the ground level to get to know the community. But I've also done quite a lot of general plan work right here, including lots of hearings in Marysville before, so I know it pretty well already. But you'll help me in that respect. Next is intelligence gathering, starting with the on the ground, starting with interactions with city staff about key issues, and with you, as well as studying existing planning documents. Dan's office is full of books about economic development and marketing strategies and other documents. County produces a lot of documents. Yuba-Sutter produces documents that will be useful to us. And on down the line, we collect that information. And then most importantly, we try to synthesize it. I'm not interested in producing more reams of documents for the sake of more documents, but rather using this part of the process to try to focus on what do we really want to push the needle on in the next 20 years? What are the biggest issues facing Marysville today, and what will they be in the future? And how then might we address them? Yes, for sure. And I think that's what you were referencing, Kathy, for one of the powerful things about that plan is that it identified functional districts within that green zone that we just showed, the medical arts district and the historic downtown and these other districts.
To the chair, your mic's off.
But yeah, I'd like to see it not gather dust in a pile somewhere.
Yeah, thank you for that. Excellent. Next. So after intelligence gathering and actually flowing through the rest of the process is public engagement. We've thought about that. What's the best way to do that for Marysville? And Kathy mentioned at the outset, one key ingredient being a diverse and representative general plan advisory committee. And I think we'll talk about that in more detail at the end. Okay. After I'm done prattling on, we'll talk more specifically about that. And we have so far, and I think there are names and organizations that we have in mind. So we plan to have parallel meetings with the advisory committee and you all on identifying key issues, a vision for the future, what alternatives for the general plan should we be looking at, and then the draft plan itself. We look to meet with the advisory committee, come here, let you know what they told us, and then get additional input from you, as well as using electronic media, city's social media presence, email lists that have been put together over time, other ways of getting electronic surveys out to the general public so you can participate on your phone while you're busy doing something else and provide useful input. And so that people don't have to, come to a certain time and place and devote 2 hours of their time to providing input on a general plan. That's it in a nutshell. The next phase is, as I mentioned, vision, guiding principles, and alternatives. The vision statement for 2040, actually, Kathy has made a draft of this, but basically it is, we're going to put something together for y'all to react to. I don't want you to have to come up with the words yourself. It's easier to react to something, but it's basically trying to be a succinct statement of if you were to walk around in 2040 in Marysville and describe what you see now, desired future state. What does that look like? Try to sum that up in just a few words to draw out your reaction and get input from others on, you forgot about this. No, I disagree about that. You're totally wrong. Or yeah, just about revise it this way. Try to put that on paper. It helps give us direction looking forward for putting the plan together. Guiding principles, also front end. Those are like shared values or the rules sort of. Marysville is a city where everyone can, there's enough housing options out there so everyone can afford a place to live without bankrupting themselves, or some other shared, what are the shared values that help direct us forward on the plan to ultimately come to high level consensus first about cloud top sorts of issues, not potholes on a particular street. Stay at the high level so we can get clear consensus to move forward to put together different alternatives. So maybe 3 alternatives that might look at where the city should be. Should it annex property? Should the city really grow up in a certain area? Should it grow out? Should it add a lot of open space, or should it surplus open space, or whatever it might be? What are 3 alternatives about how the city could look in 2040? We're going to be intentionally contrasting them. So we're going to exaggerate the difference between the alternatives so that it turns into questions for everybody to provide input on and select a preferred alternative for the general plan, which we then use to develop the entire general plan and the environmental review for it, starting with policy recommendations, the draft plan, This is going to be a comprehensive update. As you mentioned, the 1985 plan probably has some nuggets in it, but we're looking at more of an overhaul than a technical update. Along with that, an environmental impact report that's required under California law for this sort of discretionary decision by the city. The advantages that we're going to prepare environmental document that will cover the general plan, the specific plan, and we'll be rigorous about it, both on impact analysis and mitigation requirements. Not wave our hands over and say, oh gosh, I don't know what's going to happen between now and 2040, but try to be rigorous about it so that environmental document is actually useful to city staff looking forward when development projects come in. And then finally, last phase of the general plan, certification of the environmental review and adoption of the general plan, working from your recommendation onto City Council for adoption and certification. Any questions about the process?
So Matthew, it's on the engagement piece, I guess, in the notion that I'd love for my kids to come back and live in this community. What practices have you used in the past to engage youth in the process to get their ideas of what type of Marysville they see as something that they want to come back to, rather than those of us who have been here for decades and have just will probably likely stay around here? But I'd love to know ways that we can get our youth to find this is the place they want to be. So it's the engagement piece and how you do that. Thank you.
Kind of going along with that too, I know there's going to be plenty of public meetings and public hearings and advisory commission meetings, but are we doing anything up front and early just to get community involvement in this, as far as community input from residents?
We are trying to do that upfront by putting together a representative general plan advisory committee. Right. It can be hard to come out with 14 months left in the process with a giant blast and say, coming soon. Right. And by the time there's a draft plan available, there can be credibility issues because it seems like to the average person, it takes a long time. And they think, oh, I thought you said coming soon. And I didn't know you meant geologic time soon.
How are those members of the advisory committee going to be selected?
I'll defer to others on that.
So we've met internally to figure out what a good cross-section of the advisory committee should be. And what we're thinking is trying to find someone, economic development, the business community, the hospital, Caltrans, some of those technical folks. We want residents throughout the city that can represent their neighborhoods. So we are trying to compile that list right now. And we are going to be asking that a planning commissioner volunteer to be on that advisory committee as well, so that you can have somebody that can hear what goes on at the advisory committee and then share it with the rest of the commission. We are also going to do a similar workshop for the city council on April 5th and get their buy-in on recommendations as well. So we don't have a lot of time because we're hoping our first meeting is April 13th. So we have a lot to do, and as far as outreach.
If we have some ideas of somebody that you think might be.
Absolutely, that's, I'd love to hear that as well at this meeting tonight. So, thank you.
I've actually literally gone to civics classes at the local high school for general plan updates. High school kids just instinctively understand land use and transportation planning, it seems. Not only that, they know what destinations they wish to reach, and if they don't have a car, and like I didn't in high school, they understand where it's safe and not to cross the street to ride your bike to reach a destination. And we talked about that internally a little bit, if there could be such a course where I try to create a fun general plan exercise to get that sort of input. That's one thing I've done before. I think the quick and electronic method of input where you can't even really tell you're participating in a policy planning exercise is another way to get useful input from younger people in their terms, looking at their interests, but I'll also translate that into, as I will anything, y'all, if you pose it as a question, it also ends up being direction for my team. So I'll turn it into that as well.
I think there are, Steve White, I think, has a civics class at Marysville High School. It might be, what's that?
He's retired.
Oh, has he retired?
He went to Oregon or something.
I know he was pretty active.
But I do see where you're coming from. It would be nice to try to get someone on the student council from MHS, something like that.
Right.
Because it is, if you're looking to 2040, you got an 18-year-old that's going to be 40 years old, by the time this thing ends. So it is good to get the youth input into this whole thing. Yeah. Because I think that it misses out a lot here in Marysville. I do believe to where we do have the outreach, and then say the parks, the parks plan, to where did the kids be involved with it? Because the kids do play in the parks. Well, yeah, all the parents can. Well, now you're getting into the parents, their review instead of the kids. Because the parents are going to go, oh no, we need a swing. Oh yeah, mom, dad, we need a swing. So if you get the kids' input away from the parents' input, and I think that'd be good. Where you go to MHS, the student council. I think McKinney has a student council. The elementary school.
Thank you. Let's move on to the specific plan. That document that provides more specific guidance based on the general plan, not the 85 general plan, can supplant zoning, provides the rules of road for development and specific environmental clearance. And I'll very quickly walk through some of the highlights of what we'll do with that green area or similar area. Again, project initiation, we already talked about that. And that includes for the specific plan, we have already updated the historic commercial district, the National Register downtown Marysville district. Some resources are likely not eligible anymore, and there have been some demolitions. So we just wanted to update that list. It was getting kind of old. We've already done that. We are going through essentially the same exercise, looking at baseline conditions, reviewing planning documents, transportation planning documents, Caltrans, traffic counts, anything we can get our hands on, and synthesizing to help understand what should be in the specific plan. Here's a kind of important phase of the specific plan is to identify important challenges, trends, barriers, strengths. I think this should be the subject of one of those electronic surveys that we get out through various means, and ask, put something together that you can respond to in 2 minutes to identify what do you think the most important assets of downtown area are today. What are some of the real challenges you think we're dealing with in the planning realm? What are some important trends that would affect how we should be looking at the future of downtown Marysville? We'll come back to you all to get the same sort of input, and we'll really press on the representatives on the General Plan Advisory Committee for the same kind of input. Before we launch into writing this specific plan, we're going to identify some of the big picture foundational pieces after we've gone through this exercise of getting input. Like, what do we think the big ticket items, the major ingredients will be, and then confirm that with everybody, make sure that we're stepping in the right direction. we're going to have a focus in particular on identifying important destinations that people would like to be able to reach without the use of a private automobile. Where are they? Where are the gaps in the system today? And I'd like to do a little bit of design and a little bit of high-level costing work for those main gaps so that we can get done with this general plan update, turn it into a grant application to SACOG and build that gap. The specific plan will, as I mentioned before, have development standards like the things you think about going in zoning, setbacks, height limits, density, allowable land uses, all that stuff. Also land use programming. And what I mean by that is what do we have, how much development, population, jobs, building, how much we have today, looking at the economic picture, demographic picture, how much do we expect by 2040, so that you can get an idea of how much more activity there is, therefore how much water do we need, where are sewer pipes not at the right capacity, is our transportation infrastructure sufficient, all that sort of thing. What if public improvements are required, including streetscape improvements in key locations. That's all in bounds. As would be infrastructure improvements, I mentioned that backbone infrastructure, that goes along with a specific plan. We identify key areas where capacity or age is an issue, what improvements are required, and then planning level costing and financing for those.
Mentioned that we got the grant from SACOG, the Green Means Go grant funding, and the Regional Early Action Planning. The next huge component that SACOG is now looking at, the next grant opportunities will be concentrating on infrastructure. So this will be a perfect way to kind of tee that up, and hopefully we'll be competitive for this as well.
Would that include bridges, roadways in town, everything like that?
Not sure about bridges, but I do know sewer capacity, roadway capacity. I assume it could be bridges.
I was thinking more so like rerouting the train so the highway can come actually through town. Yes.
So there is a separate Caltrans project right now that's looking to expand the tunnel, the Biney road improvements. But that's certainly something we can look at. Also with the general plan, we could look at a bypass policy so that Highway 70 doesn't go through the town. Things like that we can look at.
Okay. Another key step, obviously, in the process is the draft specific plan itself and the environmental document going along with that. Similar to the general plan, moving roughly parallel track. We'd have the general plan advisory committee take a look at the draft specific plan, provide input, bring it to you all, let you know what they said. Your recommendation would go to city council for adoption, just like the general plan. Okay, so thank you for the input and the questions you've had so far. I promise I'm almost done. I just wanted to ask you a couple of additional specific questions. And I'm going to assume that microphone works also, and I can take better notes if I'm at my computer. So I mentioned that identifying key issues up front is important for us, especially when we're looking at a whole citywide long range plan. So you can see the slide before you, but I'm just, in no particular order. I'm opening the floor up for you all to weigh in on what do you think the most important topics are?
Before we get to that, one of the things we learned at the academy last week is to be inclusive and ask for public comment. So I was going to, we have somebody in the audience. I just wanted to see if she had any comment on the general plan process. Okay. Okay.
Out of all your list right there, what's important right there, or what's important in land?
Yeah, I was intentionally broad in this bulleted list here. You know, I don't want to buy it. I don't want to contaminate your input with my bias by suggesting that there's a particular problem surrounding land use. So, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what are the most important things about Marysville, especially as it relates to land use or transportation, community design, these sorts of little prompts that I've put here on the slide, but not limited to that necessarily. What is most important that I should know? Let's say I have never been here before, but I'm going to write your constitution, your general plan, and what would you like me to know as I'm doing that?
Well, I think, what time did you drive in today into Marysville, or did you stay in Marysville?
I came into town about 5:20.
Nice. So you see that traffic is a big issue, a big concern in this community. So let's say, traffic would be part of the transportation part of it.
I think the vacant buildings is a huge, it's not an eyesore, but it definitely needs to be addressed. I think we have a lot of beautiful buildings that could potentially have some great businesses.
Can I just ask, what's on the slide? We can't see anything online.
Sorry about that. We're not trying to keep it from you.
Didn't think so. Just curious.
Commissioner Deal, it's the last page on your agenda packet.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the packet, so maybe I'm just missing it. I may have missed it.
It's also the last page of the staff report, in case you have that one. But I will just I'll slowly recite what it is that we're all looking at. And so we're looking for key issues, the most important things related to land use, transportation, community design, parks and open space, public facilities and infrastructure, the natural environment, economic development and fiscal sustainability, and housing, just to give you a flavor.
I mean, they're all kind of important, that hard to discard any of them. I think economic development, fiscal sustainability is right up there too. I mean,
you are looking for like specific items that fit in those categories from us, correct? We have a lake in the middle of our town. I mean, as far as park use and recreation and so on and so forth, that is kind of a big, become a little bit of an eyesore and a little bit of a problem that I know is trying to get addressed, but that's kind of one of the bigger deals in our town is that lake.
Invasive species or water quality, or what about it?
Water quality, flow of water. I know originally it used to be an inflow, outflow kind of lake. Now it kind of just became a stagnant pool with water just filling it at some point. And I know there were some discussions to get that going in the past. I don't know what's going on currently, but it used to be jet boat races and fishing derbies and fireworks shows, and it was kind of the center of the town at one point. So.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I don't know if it's best that I just get an individual response to Matthew, because I've got a lot of comments. And so I just probably would prefer to get them to you individually. I just don't want to go through them all right now. So, I mean, I could, but I think your time may be better spent otherwise.
Yeah. I don't have cards anymore. I don't know.
I can get them to Christina.
Thank you.
And then Christina can forward them on to you.
Absolutely. And if anybody else feels more comfortable writing out their thoughts, 100% inbounds. I would love that. That's great. And what's going to happen also is you're going to leave this building and you're going to say, oh, I wish I would have said this. So you don't hesitate at all. I mean, it's okay with my bosses here. Yeah. Follow up, no holds barred.
I think the medical arts section is very important also in terms of development.
How should we be thinking about that district? What should be happening there? What activities in the future?
I think things that are related to the medical community would be, if you could get, or even, you know, it's been talked about across the street where the old car dealership was, to develop housing for people who work at the hospital. I suspect a lot of them live out of town right now. Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably looking at more of the affordable housing too.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Uh-huh. Both affordable and market rate, various housing types in and around medical arts district, focusing on the salaries and needs of the employees of Right Out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously we do need affordable housing also. But it'd be nice to be able to keep some of those people in town.
What's it called? The housing for the employee
Workforce.
Yeah,
That's what a lot of people call it.
We're having somebody from the hospital on the advisory committee, I see, so that'll be a good addition, I think.
Just like to note that affordable housing is great. It's not tax exempt at this time.
Right.
My comment on housing.
Do you have a comment?
On to Eric's comment about the medical arts district, because I have lots of comments, but I think it's helpful to be specific right now. Medical arts district, just for you to know, I used to be on the planning commission, and this might be helpful to know. For the medical arts district, we had taken away the restrictions, a lot of it, to facilitate more development, correct? And the way we did it, we had a huge discussion about it, was it was going to be market driven, okay? But when we passed that, we were supposed to be doing form-based codes later, and that never came about. And so what happened, and Eric probably knows, and y'all probably know that are living here, that the market put in things that we don't necessarily think is best for the medical arts district. Maybe you guys could discuss that. For instance, the car wash. You know, we had a whole huge discussion that evening before we passed it, and we came up with really good suggestions on what if a lot of cities that have changed and do new things, they are specific. And this is my question to you. I'm going to ask the question so I can continue because I came in a little late. Does the specific plan, does it take the place of form-based codes then? Is it specify that much? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. we say, just hypothetical, we're only going to allow historically brick buildings in the medical arts district. Is our specific plan going to be that specific, or are we still, is that part of our codes? Yeah. So I know, and we need a new discussion with this planning, but that planning, we talked about just what Eric had said, more medically based housing, things that we want to see there, not so much mechanical places. We do need those, but do we need as many as we have? Housing is a big thing. So specifying what you'd like it to look like would be really helpful, I think.
Microphone.
And uses, correct. We have specified uses, but we took it away, you know, so now it's market, and we were always meant to come back and revisit that, but we were not able to do that for variety of reasons.
Frustration on the car wash is we didn't have the option of approving or denying it. We were approving the architectural. It was an architectural review, as I recall.
I'm sorry, Chairman, let me mention that Commissioner Deal, there was a question from the last speaker that was not answered into the microphone. The question was, would the specific plan would it take the place of a form-based code? Could it be as specific as requiring historic vernacular in different locations in the city? And the answer is it can be. The specific plan could be a form-based specific plan that is agnostic to uses. It certainly will contain development standards, setbacks, and the building placement guidance that a form-based code would include, but likely would have additional information as well.
Thank you.
Matthew, for the benefit of all, would you please explain, so we're all on the same wavelength, form-based code? It's been used a lot in this conversation. Thank you.
Yes, sure. In general, an average zoning code, you might say, has two primary areas of regulation. What is allowed, what type of use is allowed, and how physically can it be developed? Setbacks, height, density, etc. Kind of those two major parts. A form-based code goes all the way on the continuum to only physically regulate building placement, things like that. It's really focused on the physical elements of development and quite laissez-faire as it relates to allowable use within the physical environment, in a nutshell.
So are you just staying to the item 1, or are you talking about 2, 3, and 4, just for clarification?
Thank you. I should have said line, and you would have given me my next line. That was very helpful. Thank you. So that the slide that Commissioner Deal couldn't see had 3 other components to it. So we've gone over what are the most important issues, and please feel free to follow up with me via email. We'll get my contact information to you. The slide also asks 3 other questions, which I'll ask now. What are some critical barriers to development and opportunities? What are the most valuable community assets today? And this last one is a good segue back into the general plan advisory committee discussion that I think is going to come next. Who should we engage in particular? So what are the barriers for what you might want to see for Marysville in 2040? What are the barriers? What are the valuable assets we should build on? And who else in particular should we engage?
I'm just going to, on item 2, I'll just say unengaged property owners with regard to development opportunities.
It's already been mentioned, but as we're aware, it's traffic.
Traffic. Homelessness.
People becoming educated and moving away and not feeling like they have a place.
I think just the, I don't know if this would count, but just the level of disposable income in the community,
yeah.
I think factor.
You know, we've got a hospital here that pays very, very, very well. Yeah. Maybe very well, I'll just say. Maybe not 3 varies, but I'll just say, considering the remainder of our, as we have learned what our median household income is. I mean, I was at a session recently where, actually Yuba County, $50,000 is your median household income. That's pretty stunning. That's not a big number. And so to be able to capture, I guess I'm jumping into the next one, where what are the assets? And we've got this hospital that's just a tremendous asset. And to be able to keep those people, I think it was Steve at the session last week was saying, you give me a place where I can live, where I can walk downtown, and I can, I think something we're almost all looking for is that environment where we can live somewhere and walk downtown and everything's accessible. And Marysville's got that. The bones are here. And for the hospital to have people, not even transitory folks, but people who don't want to drive down to the Roseville Rockland area, but find home here. It's with us. So
the biggest issue we have with that is that we do have, the little strip malls within all of our communities, but there's no businesses that want to go into them. So it's like we build it, but no one comes. And that's kind of like the situation where we're at. You got that whole place around, Round Table Pizza, built up, and they're all vacant.
No, and it's not an easy answer. But I will say a lot of it starts with housing. We bring people to this community and they say, where am I going to live? And they don't find the housing. In this current era, they can't even find a house. I'll just put it to you that way, right? So the CEO who just moved to the community was trying to find a house. Thankfully he did. But he's just saying, can you just find a house in this community? And but beyond that, assuming that's been fixed, is getting a standard of housing that meets the full spectrum of the market, not only the market, the workforce housing, the affordable housing, but also the upscale housing as well.
To talk on your point about the strip malls and so on and so forth, with the disposable income that we have, I mean, what is anyone going to gain out of going into that strip mall in East Marysville by El Rey over? You know what I mean? There's no disposable income in that community to have a dog groomer or any type of business. So I would more so say that for the downtown area, obviously, as far as barriers, space, we're a levee confined city. We don't have any more space to grow. So we're going to have to go vertical. And so doing that near the actual city itself, the downtown area, would create that environment for at least one of those zones to where you could have restaurants that people can actually go to and enjoy that aren't fit for a $50,000 income. So I don't know, maybe just a ramp up in the downtown area and some vertical housing from there.
You're even looking at probably, if you're looking at expansion, you can go north. I mean, you'd have to build a new levee out there, but you know, you got all that property north of Marysville that's considered Marysville. In the next 40 years, or what that we're looking at, you know, is that a possibility to?
And you've seen a lot of other cities take that approach to where they just kind of forget what's there and just move on to a new location and create the new rest of the city. But I don't think we have enough location to recreate the rest of the city out in another direction, like Yuba-Sutter did out off Harder and so on and so forth. We don't really have enough room for that, so we're going to have to fix what we have here.
And that's, you know, for a discussion, that's kind of like one of the areas with downtown Marysville. I mean, you got it's historic, so no one wants to touch it.
Agree.
It's like, well, if you can't touch it, who's going to come?
Agree.
You know, you got to do something with it in order for people to come.
Is the reason for nobody touching it the restrictions because of its historical, or is it because the cost of actually doing it, or
it's political. Let's say that. If you touch the building, you're going to have individuals going, "Oh, whoa, this building was built by this architecture, you know, who did this one over in Paris." Yeah. Like, well, okay, you know, but what good is it right there standing vacant, graffitied up, and you know, boards on the windows?
So then we go back to Mary's point, which is vacant buildings, which is probably one of the biggest detriments. And how do we solve that, I guess?
Yeah. And we can't have it downtown. We can't have it downtown that's all thrift stores too.
Agree.
Let's that.
Agree.
Just one thing too, because we're historical, we can't take those buildings and build up. I mean, we've only got so much land to build up on. Otherwise, we have to tear down. So, I mean, we're in a little push-pull right there also.
I was more so meaning like the old car lot area where the car wash went. Like, there is still some property there. There's a park next to it.
Right.
That's all within walking distance of downtown, so we could go vertical in those areas that are still buildable. But you're right, we can't tear anything down in the actual historic district.
Right.
And the more you build, now you've got parking being an issue. So should we have a parking garage down there?
Yes.
You know, right there would be good for downtown and the hospital.
Yes. I think our city manager wants to say something.
I've been holding off just to let you guys deliberate a little bit before I biased you. I wanted to just first start by saying where I think we're at and what we have going for us. I've been here about a year now, and I think I've got a pretty good lay of the land, but what I'm seeing is we have an excellent group of commissioners at this point in time, and you know, based on my limited conversation with all of you, inquisitive, creative, pragmatic commissioners on the commission. I also see that same type of phenomenon with the council members. We have a group, a team that is very motivated about doing something with Marysville positive. I also feel we have excellent support from SACOG. They are begging us to become more involved and asking us what we need to succeed. So we are taking more advantage of them, as well as many other entities within the community, the Economic Development Commission, the Chamber of Commerce are all resources that are just begging us to use their resources. I also think we now are developing a very good, motivated staff, particularly in the community development side of things as of recent, and we'll continue to do that. And I will also say, the two consultants that we have here tonight, first of all, AECOM AECOM is a big player. They have a reputation for doing work right. So I have a lot of confidence in AECOM, and I have a ton of confidence in Kathy Pease at MAS. She is thorough, knows her stuff, and is very practical about implementing things. So we are, in my mind, developing a team of resources here to move this city forward. I also noticed that we have a very engaged community, particularly on the residential side. The homeowners are very engaged. We've had, I agree with Commissioner Krager, we've had some apathy on the land owner side, the property owner side. They're sitting on properties. I think we have businesses that want to prosper, but we have some roadblocks with those businesses, and we've engaged those businesses. Mr. Flores has been very involved since he's gotten here in trying to get those businesses the resources they need. We're in pretty good fiscal condition right now, and so it just seems like it's a good opportunity to move forward. I think, well, and we also have a high interest in stakeholders. We've been discussing some of those same issues you guys brought up with the hospital as an example, and we want them as a partner. We asked them what their biggest concerns was, and it was housing. It was housing for their staff, and we cannot provide them with that housing at this point in time. So stakeholders seem to be very interested. I noticed as of recent, developers are very interested in infill development of properties here in town. I will say that Dan has been pushing them heavily as well. So those are good signs. I did want to mention one of the challenges, I think, particularly when we're talking about the general plan and specific plans, and Mr. Krager mentioned this. I'll get that right eventually. Timing. And so Commissioner Krager was talking about the timing, general plan versus specific plan, and doing it in parallel will be a bit of a challenge, but I think it's the right thing to do. But I'll talk about timing between those two plans and our current efforts. And so I think the city has significant momentum in many areas moving forward on projects throughout the city. There was mention of Ellis Lake. That cleanup process started Monday, and with removal of fish. That may not set well for some, but it's happening. And so that's a first step. The treatment of the water for phosphates will start in April. So that's moving forward. Housing, we do have a 71 unit affordable housing unit going in East Lake Apartments. That was a bit controversial, but it's moving forward, and they've broken ground on that. We've been working on the Marysville Hotel, and it looks like we may have some success there. It's been a long time just sitting there vacant, but we will continue to put pressure on the owner to do something with it. And as a side note, I mentioned the hospital needing housing. They're very supportive of that project, and they feel they can, if developed for their professionals, they can fill some portion of that project. It would be apartment buildings primarily. The ball field we're working on, that's not a moneymaker per se, but that and Ellis Lake are two iconic features of the town that I don't, well, I think I would be hung if I tried to remove those from the community. So instead of removing them, let's get them, enhance them, get them in good shape so that the community can enjoy it. Just met today with folks from BCAG, Butte Council of Government. I don't have the acronym right, but they're the equivalent of SACOG for our area. They want to put work on a project for passenger rail, and we were out. Dan and I were out today looking at sites that might be applicable or usable for a station here in town. Now that's a long-term, 7 to 10 year prospect, but that's something else that's going on. So in general, I see, I do not want to lose the momentum we have. So to complicate the issue with the general plan versus specific plan, I intend to complicate it even further with getting things done in between that time in the next roughly 2 years. So what I think will be imperative is that you guys, or you folks, know what those items that we're working on, and we can not only feed that information into the general plan, but the deliberations in here will help guide us on what we're doing immediately. So I hesitated to get up here and talk about too much because I want this body to think creatively and come up with ideas that perhaps we haven't thought of, but I thought it would be imperative to do this. I will also say a couple more points. Our council has been very involved in this community. You guys have echoed many of the same things they're concerned about, the same desires they have. And they intend to be very involved in this process. So I think the key will be to consistently communicate to them what is going on through this process. And I intend to do that in some manner. The last point, we just went through a strategic planning workshop for the city. And that workshop was beyond just the general plan. The general plan is really, land use oriented typically. We were discussing broader topics such as fiscal sustainability, economic development, public safety, and those types of things. But I think it would be beneficial to share that information with this body so they can see overall where the city intends to go at this point in time. As I said, I want you guys, everybody to provide their input, because I think that's what makes these types of plans successful. And I do want to get as much public and stakeholder input as possible. I did sit with our community development staff for a short period of time talking about how we develop the steering committee. And one of my desires is for this body to carefully analyze and select people that or stakeholders that would add value to the process. And we will be doing the same thing with the council. That's one of the most critical things I think we'll have here, is to get the right representation on that committee, and everyone here needs to provide that input. So I am a practical, pragmatic person. I wouldn't call myself an optimist like Mr. Flores. He lectured me that he lectured to me on that today, which was good. But I am very optimistic about where the city is going and where this body is going, as well as the council, and just generally the city is going. And I think we can realize the potential that this community has. So that was all I was going to say.
Say one thing, it's such a big process and it's so all encompassing. I think it's going to be real important for the staff to kind of keep us on point, because it's real easy to kind of get off on the tangents, I think. I guess in my mind, I'm still trying to think how detailed we want to be on the specific plans. So how specific are we? So that's all I have.
Based off of your comments, kind of one thing that just, I don't know, it strikes me. So where Marysville gets so concentrated on what's inside the levee, we don't look on what's outside. I mean, we have the biggest, I mean, your item number 2 or 3, what's the valuable community asset? We have something that Yuba City does not have. We have that riverfront park. That right there is, I think, the most valuable thing we have.
That's an excellent segue. Actually, Dan was texting me, trying to get my attention on some other projects. A couple of them are Gavin Park. We're working on that one. That's within the levee. Our 5th Street project that we've got the whole street torn up on now, and then B Street. But he didn't mention Riverfront. And I agree, Riverfront is a huge asset. We've been spending time cleaning up the softball fields, and we want to get activity on those. We'll be renewing a lease with the soccer league, and that's actually one of the largest draws down in that area. Additionally, the motocross is very successful, but we don't utilize some of the features very well. The Cotton Rosser Arena and the pavilion there could be better utilized. The FX Motorsports on the north end hasn't taken off yet, but we're working to get that populated. And then we haven't even looked at some of the stuff where our former sewer ponds were. That's actually county jurisdiction, but our land. And so all of that, I think, would be a draw. And if we do it right, I think would do it right, meaning we can draw that tourism in or that activity in, but yet somehow get them to come to our downtown area in between times or when they're not doing those activities. I think that would be an economic boon for us if we can draw them, those attendees, down into the downtown area. That's an area we'll have to figure out, and I think that has to do a lot with the amenities or lack thereof that we have that they would use, particularly restaurants and breweries and such, where they would come for entertainment and dining after whatever they're doing down in the Riverfront Park area or the motocross section. So I do realize that is a key feature of the community, and we just haven't taken advantage of it.
And then who owns, the old Fish Street Railroad? Is it railroad still? That's still there.
The 5th Street Railroad, the bridge.
Yeah, next to the bridge is that old the vacant trust.
I don't know who owns that. I assume it's still the railroad.
Yeah, because I was wondering if that could be used to our advantage, not as a bike route, but say if you want to put in, like Friday night markets, line them up right through there to where people can walk to it and do things.
Certainly a possibility. Right. Any other questions?
Any further discussion?
Chairman Vaughn, I'll just I'll blurb out my other things since we're talking about things. So the assets that haven't that I just have, the hospital, you guys have an abundance of parks so these cut both ways. So you can look at these as good or bad, because an abundance of parks is great, but that means you got to maintain an abundance of parks, and they're not always kept in great care. But there's a lot of community assets out there. Alice Lake, 35 years ago, I drove through this community and just thought this was the neatest place because of Alice Lake. And I will forever remember that initial impression. And so I continue to believe that that is the impression that people do and can continue to have come into this region. I think it's just a fantastic lake. It's wonderful to see what's going on there. The highways, they cut both ways, and then Riverfront Park as well. And then I just want to say that I appreciate the comments of the City Manager Shad, especially because he's new to the community. And I think that those are some of the best observations we can get. I always liken it to that. I've got a wall in my house that my dog lays against, and I'm just used to my dog laying against that wall. And I had relatives come over once and said, "Man, when are you gonna clean that wall?" I'm looking at the wall going, "Holy smokes, man, the wall's dirty." And the dog has just been laying against, and I love my dog. They've been laying against that wall for so long that it was the oils of the dog were all over it, but it happened so gradually, I didn't notice it. And so it took a relative coming over going, "Hey man, you got to clean your house." And so that's what I like. And the new people come to our community who are a part of our community, not just to critique it, but actually engage and point things out to us that we may think they're wrong, but we have to take a step back and say, okay, is this a valid observation? And so I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
You just reminded me of another point that you had made, and this is related to the youth. And I do think we should reach out to the schools and the high schools. But we may want to think, and I don't know how to do this. I haven't come up with a solution, but I'll use an example. I have two children. One is 28, one is 24. The 28-year-old moved away when he was right out of high school, went to college, never came back to Fresno. My second, she moved away to college and came back to Fresno, but she's not tied to Fresno. She would probably like to live somewhere else. And so I've never really asked them why they wouldn't want to move back to Fresno. In fact, my son is getting ready to move, but not back to Fresno. He wants to get out of Manhattan area, but he's likely moving to the Denver area. So how could we get input from those who have left in that college age bracket, or slightly out of college, they're just starting their careers, and understand what attracts them or detracts them from the area. And so that might be something we could figure out how to do.
I can just give you that input if you'd like it.
I just thought of another amenity right now that I think is overlooked, and that's the old cemetery north of town. I mean, if you could fix that up with some walking paths and some plaques, and talking about the people who are buried there, it's a pretty cool place to walk around in.
To add on to that, I would agree with that. The problem that I feel like we do a lot of times is we create all these fun environments for everyone to come hang out at, and obviously that's great. The more attraction to the city, the better. But the problem is then they're forgotten about and they're not maintained. Our parks in general. I don't know a single one of my friends that has children that would take them to any of our parks because they're not sanitary, they're not clean. Who knows what's in the ground? So again, to add to that, yes, I agree. But as long as we have a plan to maintain the things that we keep bringing up, it's just.
And I think it's actually better out there now than it was at one time. So
in the last 6 months or so, it's definitely come around quite a bit.
I'd like to mention the parks. Actually, they have improved quite a bit. That at least 1 block from my house, and I walk around that park 5 days a week. And it was really ran down for a while, and it's really improved. I really put some input into the city saying, please put garbage cans there, and they've done that. I mean, and I know there's problems with that as well, because people just dump their garbage in there, but at least there's an opportunity at that skate park for a honest citizen to place their water bottle in the garbage can.
Another thing is the levee roads that go around the city is I mean, there's a couple of challenges as far as crossing 70
and Highway 20, yes.
But 20, at least you can see the distance. There's one way coming back, you can't see. You don't have very good viewpoints. So you need a walkway or an overpass or something there. But it's still, you know, one of the things this area really lacks is bike paths for recreation, and to be able to go around the city would be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing because I work in Auburn, and just to see the community that gets out and walks on a daily basis, and you come into Marysville, it's like no one walks.
You must be homeless if you're seen on the
yeah, exactly.
There's nobody walking.
Or ride a bike, you know.
Yeah.
What happened? You get got in trouble. So while you're riding a bike, it's that mentality. And even you'll go over into Linda, where Yuba County maintains their parks. I mean, there's one over there by the Yuba College. I mean, I used to go there with my kids playing soccer. Oh, that thing is so active. They have the whole track in it. People are there every night. But yeah, you come back over here, and people are.
You do see, I mean, I walk our dogs up there on the levees, and you do see cyclists up there.
Yeah.
But you're correct. It's almost a disconnected path.
It is.
You get down to one end and you come back the same way. It's not really a let's go do the loop kind of activity. So.
Yeah, that's one thing that I do. I ride on the levees a lot, and that's definitely a challenging spot. I want to add a comment. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but you guys mentioned earlier the businesses downtown and building up, and all the customers are in East Marysville, but there's connection to get over there if you wanted to ride or walk over there. So we might want to focus that as another item. So anyways, thank you.
Anything else? Is that a good start for you?
I'm just going to say I really like Commissioner Mescher's ride the loop.
What's that?
Ride the loop.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like those words, ride the loop.
Yeah.
And so to connect the whole thing, so people want to go just ride the or walk the loop.
Yep.
That's a great notion.
Kelly?
Another asset that I didn't hear that I think that it's overlooked as a possible park and walking area that's beautiful next to the river, because it's Hollywood Park. Are you familiar with? It's right next to the river, and of course we've had issues having to clean it up, and we're spending lots of money. I forget how much in our budget now. We're keeping that clean, and why not take some of that money and just put some paths in? And if I can email pictures of other towns that have done this, where you don't have to necessarily maintain the whole area, right? You can just do paths. You can get some sponsors, maybe even to put a couple of signs, for the walking. But Hollywood Park, we can't build anything there because it's in the flood zone. But it would be a beautiful place, and that whole area over there, it's great for walking the dogs and doing that. And the more people that walk there, that's how you can keep people from camping there. The more we're over there, and we tried to do that in between the two cleanups, but it didn't happen. We couldn't get those people out there, and we need to ask, why aren't more people walking? Why aren't more people bike riding? I think Mr. Deal mentioned, just the connection from East Marysville to downtown. I live in downtown Marysville. I'm a big walker. I'm a bike rider, but I don't ride my bike that much here. And just the other day, I wanted to ride down to the area where the ballpark is from downtown. Think about it. Get on your bike and try to just go down to the ballpark. And I wanted to go down C Street, which is what's Highway 70 there. There's no way you can ride on the road. There's no bicycle lanes. So that takes the, okay, ride on the sidewalk. Well, I don't think we should be riding on the sidewalk, but that's the only way you could do it. But even if you ride on the sidewalk, you pass through huge driveways of people going into, right, the gas stations and all the things, and you are totally do not feel safe. So I think Mr. Krager put it, that's the vision I see for Marysville. We have a gem here, but we need to make it livable, walkable, and safe. And there are things, I know Caltrans is going right through that. That's a huge part of the reason it's not safe. But the other part is things that we do have control over and little things that we can do to make it safe. Share the road, you know, downtown Marysville, we got a lot of cut through traffic. If you're down there, they're going really fast, cutting through because they're not stopping downtown. They're just trying to get from this side to the other side. And, or they see the green light and they're way down here and they're not looking for pedestrians, you know, so we can do things to mitigate that speed of cars. We need to be more people centric, not car centric. We need to focus on people and livable. And I really think that's why less people walk, but the more we start walking and we can promote it and do it, I think it'll happen. I'm optimistic like Mr. Flores. I've been optimistic for years, but anyways, that's my vision. I like Mr. Krager's vision, and that is something to focus on. The other gem, the rivers. I know we talked about Riverfront Park. The rivers, kayaking, you know, let's see more kayaking, more, you know, we need, because we're totally about cars. When you go to council, it's like how to move the cars. It's not about how to move the people. It's how do we move the cars. So we've got to switch that mentality, and that way we'll become a more vibrant town. Vacant buildings, the downtown historical, that's one of our highlights. And I own one of the buildings that I actually bought just because I wanted to make a difference in downtown. But however, we have the ones that just sit on them and don't do anything. So I'm all for doing some vacancy tax or something. I don't know if you guys had discussed that earlier in one of the planning commissions, perhaps, but doing something to make it not as attractive to just sit and let it be vacant. I mean, that's, some of the towns have done it. It's kind of hard to figure out, maybe research other towns that have done it. That would be helpful, because if you read books on downtown really emerging and becoming vibrant, it's the downtown are the most exciting places because they built it back then. Everybody was walking and together, and then we started building out. But these buildings in downtown are built where you can do a lot with them because of the way they're built. You can, you know, even in the building I own, there's 3 units. But if I wanted to, I could make one big unit in it. The building's built like that. So there's something to be said about these historical buildings. And then jump to the other comment is building up denser housing. And I think we're already looking at that, but I didn't hear it brought up again. And we do have some land that could be built up. We have places along 3rd. I mean, we have some solar panels sitting in a parking lot. I mean, like, let's think of better uses for that. Housing, we need housing. So maybe look at when we're out driving around, maybe we could just start jotting this down while we're working on the general plan. There's probably places we're not thinking of to build, you know, out by Save Mart. There's so many, we have so many locations. I don't want to take up the time, but I just thought I'd mention the ones I was thinking of while I sat. So thank you. Thank you all.
So I think we need to pick a commissioner to be on the.
Yes, so that's one item. And then again, if you have recommendations for stakeholders you think would be great on the advisory committee. Don't need
how
to
many
let
are you
us
planning?
know tonight, but you can email it to us as well if you think of folks. So yes, do I have a volunteer? And the commitment right now is about 4 meetings throughout the process to check in at times where we'd like to find feedback. So not a ton of meetings. That's what we're thinking.
Anybody want to step up?
I can't see the commission, but I'd volunteer.
Yes, we're thinking there are evening meetings because we want to give folks that might work a chance to be able to participate.
I'll do it.
Okay, so I hear 2 volunteers.
Oh,
I
we
think
have
Ben Deal,
Ben Deal.
and Steve.
If just one, it's fine. Ben can.
It's all yours, Steve.
Is it possible to put 2 on there? Or no?
It is possible to have 2. We want to make sure that the group is not too huge, so everybody has time, but I think 2 represent. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Do we need a motion for that?
I'll make that motion that we appoint, I'm trying to planning commissioners, Mesher and Deal to the advisory board for this general plan.
Great.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there anything preventing us from going to those meetings?
No,
to observe
no, great
if we
point. They're open to the public. Anybody can come. There will be opportunities for the public to provide input to at the meetings. So that would be great. Thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay, Kelly.
Yep. Great idea. And I'll just, as long as my mic's on, remind everybody the first of the general plan advisory committee meetings is scheduled for April 13th in this room in the evening, 6 p.m.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
I'm sorry,
Does staff know how many hits we get on our website?
I'm sure they do, but I do not. We can bring that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If we do the online thing on our website, okay, do we really get the outreach on our website?
There may be other outlets that are better.
Either way, just giving them an outlet to go to, even if it was an independent website or anything, as long as you could promote that as somewhere for them to go. So either way.
This might be, there may be opportunities to promote it through, say, the EDC, lost my chamber. They all have websites, and the more we publish, probably the more we'll get.
Okay. Okay. Item number 9, commissioner comments. We'll go around the commission. Commissioner Bramer.
Just like to congratulate all the new commissioners, and hopefully we have a good year ahead of us.
Commissioner Langsdorf.
Same. I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Krieger.
I'll just echo the same. Thank you.
Commissioner Mesher.
I just feel compelled to say the same thing.
Commissioner Rollins.
I look forward to it. I think it's going to be a great opportunity. Thank you.
I just have one little observation, I'd already mentioned this to staff. It might be helpful to have the city attorney come at a future meeting to inform us about the Brown Act and what we can and can't do outside the meeting as far as gathering together, things like that. So I think it would be helpful for the new commissioners and a good refresher for the rest of us. So that's all I have otherwise.
Don't forget about Commissioner Deal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hopefully I'll get to meet everyone in person next time. Thank you. No comments.
All right. Okay, motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, anybody second? All in favor? Aye. Nobody opposed.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.